It is not a disease that you contact by touching somebody affected by leprosy. That's one of the most, misunderstood concepts of leprosy. That you touch a person affected by leprosy, you catch leprosy. No, you don't catch leprosy because of that. Okay? It doesn't come genetically, it's not hereditary, nothing of that nature. It is like any other bacteria floating in the air anywhere, wherever you are. And by God's grace, most people have an immune system which will not allow this bacteria to grow in our bodies.
.3% alcohol. 2 for 109. 2 for this.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Two of you guys together.
Self-adjusting? Self-adjusting?
Yeah.
So close.
It's pretty interesting looking, isn't it?
Just a little bit. I tried to. What kind of pies do you want to? You're looking down, mate. Look, you got your eyes down. You got to look up. Oh, your eyes hit the hole.
We need a background. We need a background. Okay.
Oh, like that's not.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I think it's very far-fetched as of now because it's a bacteria. And to remove a bacteria from the face of this earth is going to be a long drawn affair. There's a reason for that. For example, certain diseases we were able to find vaccines, and once you have a vaccine, it is easy to arrest the disease. Now, there's a problem with Mycobacterium leprae, which is the leprosy bacteria. There's a problem with that on the dimension of vaccine. When do you create a vaccine? When you're able to grow a bacteria on a medium and culture that medium and create an antidote or a virus, a vaccine. That's how the whole process of vaccine development takes place. Okay. Now, for that means that you have to grow this bacteria on a medium first of all. Okay. Now, this is a very peculiar bacteria, Mycobacterium leprae. Now, this does not grow on any medium. Okay. And if it grows, it dies very quickly. So you don't have enough time to create sufficient amount of growth to create a vaccine.
That's the advanced one. Yeah, not many people. No need for him to go to the gym. Slow down. Take your time.
Here we are in India. Go.
Crazy.
Great.
Well, we were here as expats because my husband worked for a multinational company, so it was very privileged. We lived in a very nice house. I had a driver and housekeeper, a cook, and our children went to American Embassy School. It almost feels like you just step back in and it's all familiar. It's all familiar, the noise and the sounds and the smells and the people and the busyness and the bright colours.
Me. Who knows where they go?
I think India is a land of extremes. I mean, you have the most wealthiest people, the highest proportion of millionaires in the world live in India, but you probably have the highest amount of people who live in poverty. They live together, but they probably don't actually integrate. I think it becomes part of, you know, it's right in your face. So I think, if I'm honest, I felt that I did probably become a bit hardened. And part of it, maybe you felt whether you thought you were trying to survive, and maybe part of it is that you thought that what could you actually really do? Well, I think there's still poverty in New Zealand. It's just that maybe it's not as visible as it is here in Delhi. You see it on the streets a lot more. The thing is, in New Zealand, we still have people living in poverty. I think that in New Zealand, we're a bit more fortunate that I think the government there's a bit more aid for people to help. In New Delhi, they don't have that aid from the government.
We made it.
Ironically, you haven't actually been to a leprosy hospital yet, have you?
No, I haven't. This is the first time I've been fortunate, I want to say fortunate and very thankful to be able to be on a trip with Brent with his work, because I've always stayed at home.
What are you expecting to see?
It'll affect me.
Even thinking about it's affecting you.
Yep.
Okay, the research is going on world over in US, and we have a research lab here, and we have a research lab at Nepal, etc. Okay, now a lot of research is going on in terms of where to grow this bacteria. Okay, but so far, last 40 odd years, we haven't succeeded to find a medium on which we can grow this bacteria. Very peculiar bacteria.
Wow. Right, more traffic's in here. I don't know how we did that. Oh man. I think about moving forwards.
Yeah, I got a list.
Oh!
No.
And then, how do you stop making tools?
So you stop recording when you want to.
Government of India also does a lot of awareness program on leprosy on October 2nd, which is the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhiji's birthday, because Gandhiji has done a lot of work for leprosy affected people. He was one person who in his ashram, in his place where he used to stay in Wardha, actually had one of his persons, his secretary, was affected by leprosy. And Gandhiji used to go and dress that person every day. Wow. So that way Gandhiji had a lot to do with leprosy work. As per the Government of India statistics, is roughly 130,000 per year. And but but these are the cases which are reported to the government healthcare system. Okay, so those who are not reported, who have gone to the private system or not reported at all, the numbers will be much larger, much larger.
Thank you very much.
Since we really do not know the transmission, the mode of transmission, the one which we know as of now is it is a nasal drop transmission. That means it is through the air, droplet transmission. We know it is not through touch. That much we know. We know it is not genetic. That much we know. We know it is not through transfusion. We know all that now. Okay, but there is no other way which we can think of how it transmits, except for the nasal drop transmission. What we found in some experiments which our lab has done is in over a period of time, this bacteria was found in soil in some parts of the country. That means it has gone into the soil. So through the soil it can transmit.
But like tetanus.
Yes, yes. If the disease has gone off from, say, Europe, substantially gone off in Europe, one of the assumptions is that because the living standards have gone up. That's the only thing that we can think of.
250 shillings, whatever that is.
Well, they got the same tickets as us. Look at the freaking queue. New Zealand is pushing. It's cool.
We pay extra to push
Oh,
it.
good, good. I'm happy we do that.
Well, it was really weird. I was actually feeling a bit off and I was on my bed. And I got this call and Gillian said, hello, it's the Leprosy mission here. And I thought, well, that's funny, they've already thanked me. You know, I got my little video that said, thank you very much. And I thought, oh, they've already thanked me, so that's nice, they're going to ring me as well. And then she said, congratulations, you've won the prize. And I said, what prize? She said, oh, that's good, you didn't know there was a prize. And I said, no, tell me more. And she said, well, anybody that rang up that day, their name was put in a drawer. So I said, did you pull my name out of a hat? And she said, yes. So then I said, well, what's the prize? And she said to go and visit 2 of the hospitals in India and also one in Nepal. But of course, the very next day was the earthquake, so that was quite all right. Yes. Oh, I think the thing that stuck with me was that still there is no true understanding of how leprosy is caught. They know it's a bacteria, and they know it's from acid droplets, but they don't know exactly how it's contracted. And so, what they need to find out is that key. And so that's really put in my heart the desire to pray that somebody will find that key. Oh, I've just loved starting to read the book, 10 Fingers for God. It's a fantastic story about Dr. Paul Brand, and actually I'm just getting into it now. I should have read it on the plane, but I watched 3 movies instead. So I love the little bit that I've heard so far of how he discovered that even at night time sores were appearing, and so he decided to have somebody spy on these guys that they were doing a little study on, and they noticed rats coming into the room and nudging the people's hands and feet and finding that they weren't moving, and so they were biting them. How gross is that? And so he had the most awesome way of an answer for this was he gave everybody a cat. Isn't that fantastic?
Very innovative. monster, isn't it?
We operate 14 hospitals in the country, which are leprosy as well as general services hospitals. These services are given for people affected by leprosy as well as for general healthcare services. The reason why we do both the services, general healthcare as well as leprosy, is that if we do only for leprosy affected people, then there is no integration of these people with the society. Okay. One of the major problems of leprosy is the discrimination and the stigma and the isolation.
Coming back to India reminds me of when I was in India before, when my parents were with the Leprosy Mission in Nepal, and this hospital is very similar to the hospital where my dad was, and it's been really neat because I think now that I'm older and I'm a mother and I'm a woman, I can relate to the women that are here, and it doesn't seem to matter the language barrier because I sign. It's a very humbling experience too, because just seeing these people with so little, and in New Zealand, we have so much that we just take for granted. We've just learned that they have 9 or 10 new cases of leprosy every day, and they see a huge amount of patients every week, and they work long hours. People travel long ways to come here, and these people have been waiting for a long time to see a doctor. I think in New Zealand, if we had to wait over half an hour, we would be complaining that we hadn't been seen, we didn't have an appointment kept. But these people are just waiting so patiently and being very humble about it. I know what stigma means from my own life. I know what it feels like to be rejected. I know what it feels like not to be included. And so that gives me, I suppose, an empathy, a more understanding with the people who have leprosy. Yeah.
The first dose itself will kind of kill the bacteria by almost about 90 to 95%. The first dose itself. Okay. So the regime is normally up to 6 months to 18 months. It depends on the stage in which the disease is identified. So within 6 months, you are completely killed the bacteria and cured. Quick identification, diagnosis, and the treatment. The earlier the better.
These people just seem really, really super helpless and in pain, fed up, lost, lonely. The stigma of just being rejected And that's a big thing for me. You know, it breaks my heart seeing the rejection and feeling the rejection, especially, you know, learning about leprosy is one thing, but actually seeing it up close and personal is totally different, and you just can't help but reach out. So part of that's touch. Sometimes you see sadness, sometimes you see longing, sometimes you see pain, sometimes you see suffering, and what surprised me is sometimes you see joy. So
Why does that surprise you?
Because, you know, sometimes you have a headache or a sore stomach and you think that, you know, the world's coming to an end, but some of them had no arms, or no fingers, no feet, and yet they could still be happy. So it did shock me.
For example, for the reconstructive surgery, now we had no solution till about 40 years ago, roughly, till Dr. Paul Brand experimented in terms of reconstructive surgery. We had no solution to that, but he experimented on that, and after that, a whole new avenue opened up for people with disability in terms of getting a corrective surgery done. The way it is corrected is the tendons. For example, there is a deformity, one tendon is affected, one nerve is affected. All that they do is that they disconnect that one and connect the second one. They are two provided by God.
Conditions are very, very different, but I think they're rather lovely here. They make me think of, you know, hospitals years ago with big windows, plenty of light, the green, the white and the green, which I remember from years ago. And it's interesting to hear Brent say that cost of keeping a patient in hospital here is $15 per night, equivalent New Zealand dollars. In New Zealand, it's about $700 per night. They only have their basics here, but they make the most of what they've got. I like to see people growing things, and I'm seeing lots of, you know, all the crops here. I'm seeing vegetables. I'm seeing lovely fruit in the markets. And I think the cooking, although I think quite a lot is cooked in quite a lot of oil, which I'm not so happy about. And a lot of their treat food is very sweet, very high sugar, but we don't see the obesity that we're seeing at home. Because I think when you go to a new country, I think you need to be prepared that this is a different culture. People are going to have different, not standards, that's not the right word, but they're going to have different ways of doing them, and everybody's different.
We used to go and actually find cases, house to house. Okay? Now that was stopped now after 2000, because the incidence of the disease was supposed to have come down to some extent, so that has stopped. Now only when people come to report, then we identify the cases. But recently, in the last 2 to 3 years, government has realized that in some parts of the country, the disease is actually coming back, is re-emerging. in the old days, when people affected by leprosy, once they have a ulcer or a deformity, etc., they were segregated from the main society and kept outside the village or a town into what is called a colony. Okay, and those colonies became bigger and bigger and grew because one generation, second generation, third generation. Now in these colonies you have 3 generations living, for example. Okay, now the parent could be affected by leprosy, but not the child. But the child still lives in the colony. Okay, and some of them have moved out, and some of them move out for this reason as well. That as long as they are in the leprosy colony, the stigma continues. The moment they move out, there is no stigma. What we are seeing now is that our institutions are known for this level of treatment, so the patients come from very far off distances. You know, sometimes 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers kind of distances. And because our services are known. Those affected by leprosy, especially if there is a wound, if there is a visible deformity, okay, they hesitate a lot because they hide, first of all, the deformity, because they wouldn't like to be seen or known as a person affected by leprosy in the society, in the community or the village. So they hide. So they take a long time to come.
Ready? Rolling. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Action.
My name is Kathy Dillner. I come from Auckland in New Zealand, and I've had the wonderful privilege of winning the prize for the Cure One competition. And now here I am on this amazing journey to come here to this little village to meet Rinku, who is our special girl this year that we want to be able to use to show the world how wonderful it is to be able to support the leprosy mission.
And then just maybe give your impressions how far you've travelled. We can do it in multiple takes, so it's not probably going to be...
Tell me if there's something like you'd like me to bring out, so I'm a bit probably overwhelmed.
2, 1. Action.
To see all these people, it is really quite overwhelming, and yet I know it's so much more overwhelming for Rinku to have the camera on her when she is not used to seeing people from other countries. And so I feel for her, I feel her that she maybe feels quite embarrassed and shy, and I hope that she feels our love for her today. So that's what I'm bringing in this time. She's had a reaction. So it's wonderful that we can be here and also meet Rinku's mother, Guitar Debbie. It's great that we could be with her too and be here at her home. And one of the things that we are hoping to be able to do is to really help not just Rinku but her family. So first of all, Rinku has had some treatment, and the bacteria that causes leprosy has been destroyed, so she hasn't got that in her anymore, but there is a reaction to leprosy which brings her immune system to be quite vulnerable, and so that's being worked on at the moment. And when that has come right, then the next thing is to see treatment on her hand, which has been affected. Okay, sorry, suddenly getting a little overwhelmed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action.
So as well as helping Rinku, and it's very lovely to be able to have her mother beside me. This is Guitar Debbie, and we're glad that we can meet her mum and her family. First of all, she had her leprosy treatment, which has been finished, so the bacteria has been destroyed or gone from her body. So as well as helping Rinku with her becoming well again, we also have a plan to help this family to generate an income. Is that better? That's better. When you come in.
I just thought what a beautiful young woman she is, and I wish there was some other way we could have done it, but when you come here you've got a whole village as well as a family, and that's what made it really, really hard for her. Well, there's very little actually inside it. There's a quilt on the floor, which I presume is where they sleep, and in the kitchen area there's a few bottles of this and that and some things they cook with, but there's really very, very little there. A clawed hand, I'm familiar with the Leprosy Mission claw, and I was quite shocked at how bad it was, to be honest, and I can see the difficulty in that sort of microsurgery to get it back to be the sort of hand that she could use. And I love the way they said, particularly as a girl, she needs to be able to do up buttons or do up her sari or do her hair, and I thought that was really moving too, that they will find some way of helping her.
These people live in the community. So we have to have community level interventions where these people are accepted by other people in the society, in the community. Now, a couple of things happen for these people in the society. One, because of the discrimination, they lose their livelihoods. They have no living options. So we provide certain types of loans sometimes of skills at times. We network them with other banking institutions for loans, etc. So we provide all sorts of support so that they stand on their own feet. And there's a great pride if they actually stand on their own feet and do it themselves. So we kind of encourage them to get that self-pride.
जो आपको पीछे रख सकते आप अपनी जिंदगी जियो अपने सपने जो हैं वो पूरे करें
I love you.
इसे कहते हैं आई लव यू इस तरह उन्होंने साइन बनाया ना
I love you.
बोलो बोलो बोली ना
बोलो बेटा जो ही बोलो धन्यवाद बोलो
थैंक यू बोलो ना
थैंक यू बोलो
तब वो सुनेंगे तो खुश होंगे बोलिए आप सबको धन्यवाद इतना तो बोल सकते हैं ना बोले
Hot and people and like what's going to happen next. But it was such a wonderful thing to be able to sit beside her and hear how much better she's feeling, and to hear her mother say that they've been helped already, and now, you know, there's this little shop being erected and some food put in it so that they can have their own little grocery store so they can, you know, start to live again. You know, I did feel for her though, you know, with all those people staring, and I'm sure she was so embarrassed and just overwhelmed with all these people, not just us, the foreigners, but all the people from the village coming to stare and watch her. That was overwhelming, and I felt for her. I wanted her to know that we accept her and that we, you know, that there is hope for her, and that she's not an outcast at all. She's someone that's deeply loved by God, but also as a human being, I want to love her too.
Was very touching seeing her being still shy and scared to be faced to a big crowd, like lots of white people. Hardly did any white people coming in this area where she lives. And now seeing that she's making progress with her leprosy treatment. I'm very touched when I saw these young people when Rinku opened her shop and people bought stuff of her, and I bought a bag of lollies and supplied it to the young children of the village. I've been warned that it's going to be a stampede, and it was. And to be honest, it made me cry. How little it needs to make these young people, young children happy. Only a lolly and they run forever. I adopted 2 children from Romania, and that's also part of my, being me, to support other people. And I think that's a very, very important thing, to be aware that we have so much and they have so little, and just share it. It doesn't hurt you at all. And now today, being here, a totally different story. We see a young girl. She's very confident and smiling and talking to people, and yeah, she can see what progress she made, and she's is now a part of the community again, and that's again another perfect story what the Leprosy Mission did here.
When they first met her 2 years ago, she was probably very similar to Rinku. Shy and embarrassed. Now she's got confidence, she's happy, and she smiled at us all as soon as we arrived. How lovely was that, being able to do this now, and to do, I can't say the word. Namaskar. I can usually say it, I was just tongue-tied. To have her be able to say that is so important for her with her hands like that. And also she'll be able to button up her buttons and do things that, and go to school again now. She's at school. Isn't that just awesome? She's back to school and her family are just so happy, and she can walk again. She's got a special thing on her leg, a brace on her leg, and she can walk, and she just looks happy, doesn't she? She looks happy.
Big smile.
Bye.
What happens is that children from these families also do lose the opportunity to study in the mainline schools. So what we provide is 2 types of support for children from leprosy background. One is we run 6 vocational training centers in the country, where these children go for vocational trades like diesel mechanics, like garment making, or electrician, computer-aided courses, these kind of vocational trades. So these children are also trained in those vocational trades. And again, just as in the hospitals, in the vocational training institutions also, we have children from leprosy background as well as children from other backgrounds. So that the children from other backgrounds, one, lose fear of the disease. They are sensitized to these issues of the leprosy affected people, and they accept the other fellow students as equals. So they normally don't like to put the leprosy colony as their home address. When they don't have the address as the leprosy colony, we don't have a problem. No school has a problem. But when the address is of a leprosy colony, some schools raise certain issues. So that's where our people go and talk to them. And a lot of them, when we explain to them what the disease is all about, why the child is tested and not affected by leprosy, we find them accepting the child into the school. But it needs talking. It needs. If there's a visible deformity, the problem is quite difficult. Is definitely difficult. So our work is, we have institutional hospital work, we have institutional vocational training work, we have a community-based community development work. In the last few years, what we have felt is, though we are having the vocational training in our institutions, especially girls and women are unable to take advantage of these trades because they have to travel long distances to come to our institutions. So we started what was called a community-based vocational training program, where we go into the community to train them on vocational trades, especially girls very keen on garment making, because they can start with a sewing machine in their village and start a livelihood option.
So exciting to come here and see these young girls who can't actually go to the training centre because for some reason, you know, they've got responsibilities at home or they're too far or their family don't want to let them go. To see them having this opportunity to learn to sew or to make candles or to do henna, like I've just got all over my hand, it's just fantastic. It's that holistic gospel that we're bringing, to see them be able to have a livelihood, to support their families or themselves. This is what it's all about, isn't it? Taking people out of poverty and giving them hope.
Ma'am, one picture.
नेगेटिव पार्टी समझ रहे हो ना? पता चल जाएगा पॉजिटिव कौन है और नेगेटिव कौन है। नेगेटिव है, इसके दो सिरे, नेगेटिव को पॉजिटिव दे देंगे तब नहीं जलेगा। हमें पॉजिटिव को पॉजिटिव ही देना है, नेगेटिव को नेगेटिव।
Leprosy is a multifaceted problem. It's not just a medical problem. If it's a simple medical problem, you administer medication and then you are out of the issue. But unfortunately, leprosy is a very peculiar disease which leads to physical deformities, unlike in any other disease. And that deformity and the wounds that are caused because of the lack of sensitivity in the parts of the body, the extremities, which leads to ulcers, which actually make people away from the society.
Yeah, I felt crying, but the tears just don't want to come out. And
so what happened that made you want to cry?
But when you see those elderly people, like being left alone, like being left alone, and yeah, like the family not looking after them, and then just pretty much abandon them, and it's very sad to see them. I've come from an orphanage where it's very poor. They don't treat you very well. They don't look after you. They don't give you enough food. And my parents, from who I've now adopted me into their lives, they love me and they care for me. It's very, very, very powerful. They don't see often family, relatives or anyone come to them. So it's very sad because same in the orphanage, they don't like their parents or whoever wants to see them, they don't come. It's just shocking that people just leave you by yourself, and somebody else has to take care of you. That the person who got rid of you, they don't love you anymore, and they just don't want you anymore.
I think those elderly gentlemen that we have just seen, who have been here so many years, who've been abandoned by their families, and I just think they're, well, again, I'm setting my standards on their way of life because I feel that, I think the isolation, I think I, as a person, need to be out seeing people, finding out what other people are doing, mixing with people. But I spoke to the superintendent and she said they all do have jobs, positions, so that gives them, well, to me, that gives them some purpose.
Oh, I think hearing that man had lived there for 35 years and yet to see his joy. But, you know, he doesn't get many visitors. That little group of men that we met, his family had dropped him off, just abandoned him, given the wrong address and gone. And so this Leprosy Mission Hospital cares for these people. They've let it be their home. They've not turned them away, and he's lived there all these years. And it was just so beautiful. He sang us a song, and we found out that it was all about Jesus. And he was telling us that, you know, the most important thing is that we love one another. That they just live isolated, really, and that really touched my heart.
What care are you actually addressing the needs of a person affected by leprosy? You're addressing the needs holistically, not only medically. You're addressing it psychologically. You're addressing it sociologically. You're addressing it spiritually. Because many places it is seen as a sin, which has nothing to do with.
में देखते रह के खत्म करना, ठीक है? जब तक वो बोले नहीं ना खत्म, तब तक खत्म इधर ही देखना। इधर देखते रहना बस।
मेरा नाम दीपांजलि कुमारी है। मुझे पता चला जब लेप्रोसी मिशन में गए तब पता चला कि ये लेप्रोसी है, और वहाँ से बताया कि दवाई खाना पड़ेगा 6 महीना, तब जाकर ठीक रहेगा तो कुछ नहीं, और नहीं होगा तो ऑपरेशन करवाना पड़ेगा। लेप्रोसी मिशन वहाँ पे दवा दिया खाने के लिए और पढ़ाई के लिए हेल्प किया, और बोला कि हमसे जितना बन पड़ेगा हम करेंगे और पढ़ाई करेंगे। प्रभु को जानते बहुत दिन से और प्रभु में बपतिस्मा भी ले लिए और प्रभु हमें साहस दिए इस सब बीमारियों से लड़ने का। प्रार्थना करते थे और बहुत डर गए थे जब सुने कि हमें ये रोग हो गया। तब वहाँ पे सुने कि ये रोग ठीक नहीं हो सकता और जो नस होता है इसका वो बैठ जाता है, इसी वजह से ये बीमारी हो जाता है। तो प्रभु हमें ये सबसे बढ़ने में सहायता किए और प्रभु को हम जाने जब प्रभु हम लोग गिरे हुए थे तब प्रभु हम लोगों को उठाए और प्रभु मेरे लिए बहुत महान है क्योंकि हम जब भी गिरते हैं प्रभु हमें उठाते हैं, इसलिए प्रभु मेरे लिए बहुत मायने रखते हैं और प्रभु गिरे हुए को उठाने के लिए ही आया। मेरा गवाही यही है कि हम लोगों को उतना कोई पसंद नहीं करता फिर भी प्रभु हमें पसंद करता है, यही मेरे लिए बहुत है। मेरा प्रभु मेरे लिए बहुत मायने रखता है।
फोटो कैसे दिखाई देता है? फोटो कैसे दिखाई देता है?
So it's just great to see this young girl who has been caught early with her leprosy, and so this goes really well with one of the projects that Leprosy Mission has, which is Catch Them Early. She's actually already got a scholarship, and so she wants to become an accountant. So you know that the prospect for her is fantastic, and that's because she's been caught early, and because it's caught early, the stigma that is attached to this disease isn't there, and so there isn't that shame and embarrassment that people who aren't caught early will have.
But unfortunately, even many church groups still think it is a sin. So we have what is called Leprosy Sunday program, which is the last Sunday of January every year, where we go to many churches to speak and talk to the congregations about the issues of leprosy, about the mission and the love of Christ. We do that on the last Sunday, and we do that now, not only the last Sunday of January, the whole of the first 6 months of the year, we go to varieties of churches in Delhi and all other locations that where our institutions are. So many congregations are sensitized to this problem. We are not an organization which converts quote unquote people to Christianity, because we believe that the change in heart of a person is done by the Holy Spirit, is not done by us. That's fundamentally we believe in. Okay. Second, if somebody wants to know more about Christ, etc., there is literature available, is provided for. But beyond that, we say that it has to be done by a local church, not by us, because we are not a church. Okay, we are an organization inspired by love of Christ, but we are not church. Okay, that is a different body altogether. So we direct them to the local church. For us, is to show the love of Christ through our work and direct them that this is, and tell them why we work. Now, whether they want to accept it or not, it is their choice. Okay. You should also remember that we work in a country which is 85% Hindu and 2.5% is Christian. Okay. And we work under certain constraints. One. Okay. So legally we abide by the law of the land. Spiritually we abide by the Holy Spirit's calling, and we believe that it is the Holy Spirit which changes the heart of a person to come to know Christ, not us. Okay. So we tell them why we do and what we do, and leave it to them to decide what they want to do.
She's having physiotherapy at the moment.
Pre-operative physiotherapy.
This one's okay. That's good. Oh, excellent. Okay, so it's this hand here is the problem.
The problem is that
Leprosy is not in the news very often, but there's still 5 million people with leprosy. We think. We're pretty sure it's that sort of number. Every 2 minutes, someone is diagnosed with leprosy. One thing is the shame and the stigma of leprosy means people just don't come forward, particularly women. I mean, it's way more men are diagnosed with leprosy than women, and that tells you this is an equity issue. It's about women not coming forward for social reasons, for stigma reasons, for things like that means women aren't coming forward. When you are involved in doing things, doing the treatment, doing this, that can become your primary objective. But I think the challenge for us, and we've been speaking about this at international level, is we want to be more than an aid organisation. We are more than an aid organisation. So how can we proclaim as well as demonstrate the love of Jesus? And I think that's a huge challenge for all Christian aid organisations, is what makes you different, what makes you unique, and it should be Jesus. Look, we want to see more people cured of leprosy. That's what we want. We want to reach out to as many people with leprosy as possible. We've got lots of challenges. Our buildings aren't flash. Our cars aren't flash. We don't have lots of, the structures and the things where we work from aren't flash. I'd love to see them looking better, but our big challenge is we want to reach more people with leprosy. We want to get out, because if the numbers go up in the short term, which is actually what we want to see, it means that in the long term they're going to come down. And what we want to see is leprosy ended in our lifetimes.
God says that perfect love casts out fear. And when we know how much He loves us, and we want to actually display that love and let that love pour out to them, let love be your guide.
They're doing the best they can with what they've got, and that means we're all on the same playing field, really, aren't we?
I will share more in future after this personal experience, and hopefully this will have an impact on my entire family, and they doing the same thing.
And sometimes I think as Christians we can get so concerned about our own salvation that we sometimes can forget about our neighbours and who are our neighbours, and they're actually everybody who is in need.
I tend to see the person first and then the disability. So to me, it doesn't matter if you've got 10 fingers or 2. There's a person inside there who is valuable and who's worthy to God and who is loved by God and treasured by God. And that's what I relate to.
I think it's surreal being here. You can't, it's kind of like you forget what it's like to have everything. It's a mind blow, yeah.
I think because materialistically they are so poor compared with us, but I think they make the best of what is available. I think they're so resourceful. Everything is used.
I learned that you have to take care of each other, that you have to be there for each other, and if someone is in need, that you be there for them.
Because these are people's lives that we're talking about, who through their own circumstances and the way they get ostracised, and God loves them as much as He loves me, but we just, because of maybe where I've been born, and we don't choose where we're born.
When I went first to the hospital, I was quite disturbed. My first visit to the hospital was very, very disturbing. But then when I saw the people, how our staff interact with these people, it's a life-changing experience. how can you exhibit so much of love to somebody else who is disadvantaged unless you yourself have experienced that love of God? You can't do it otherwise. It can't be done professionally. That's out of question. If it can be dealt professionally, then I suppose this problem could have been dealt with very easily by anybody. So it's not a professional technical work. It is much beyond technical. Because when you listen to some of these stories, some of these people, how they were kind of neglected, sent away by their families or their close relatives, etc., and how they experienced the love of God when they came to the Leprosy Mission Hospital. Now, those are life transforming experiences. Who all are for tea? All for tea or some coffee drinkers?